First of all, thank you all so much for being here tonight. We're thrilled to be here. We're thrilled to have this summit here in DC. And more importantly, I'm just really honored and humbled to be here with you, Vicki, to just talk about Opportunities Work, and just would love to have you ask you some questions, and that many of our guests have already asked us. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to begin this conversation to ask you first, tell us about Opportunities Story, because there's some that are here in the audience that are not familiar with Opportunities Work and how long we've been doing this.
Yeah, so what we'd like to do is really make this a conversation. We're going to talk for just a few minutes about questions that you've sent in advance, and try to address those things so we can get to that. And then we're going to open it up and see if there are other questions that you'd like to share with us. So a little bit about Opportunity, because I think we've got an interesting mix of people that have been with us for a while and then some brand new folks. As was already mentioned, Katherine, we've been around for about 40 years. We were started by a U.S. businessman and an Australian businessman who, and I love to laughingly say, you know, they actually started the work before Muhammad Yunus, but they were not as good marketers as Muhammad Yunus was, because it was all of the work started back in the early 70s, and these gentlemen were taking money out of their own pockets and actually giving it, or loaning it, I should say, to people that were living in poverty, not actually knowing if it would be repaid. And so when I talk about Opportunity, I love to really own the fact that this organization is an organization that is built on innovation. We're very innovative because we took that beginning and then we built out a network of NGOs because it was so popular. People, women primarily, did pay the money back. And so we put them in groups, and they got together and they were one another's collateral. And then we moved on up and started with a separate approach to lending, which was Dia Vicus, which is a little bit like a private equity firm that loans money out. And if you do a good job, you get money back or you get more money. We also made an investment in a number of banks around the world. We created the very first microinsurance company, which today, no one thought you could provide insurance to the poor. No one thought, except maybe David Sims. But interestingly enough, we spun that off 3 years ago, and microinsure today is serving, I think, 14 million clients with a run rate of $1 million a month, which is unbelievable. And so, you know, now we're looking at new and different ways of ensuring that we can take capital that you all invest in us. And to the earlier point that Wendy made, we do have very audacious goals. We really believe that there's dignity and purpose in creating jobs for people. We are not an organization that believes in handing out things. We believe that we're on the ground. We're partnering with people that are just like you and me. They just live in a different place. And so we partner with them to provide an entry into capital, an entry into the world of education, an entry into building their lives around the core tenets that we know poverty really strikes. And it's amazing because we have two of our beautiful clients with us here this evening. Actually, well, two clients and then some other folks. And my experience, and you know all the stats. I mean, the stats are we serve 94% of the 13 million people that we serve are women. They pay back their loans 98% of the time. All that stuff, $9 billion of capital has been invested since we started. I think all those things are really interesting because so many of our donors are very financially attuned. But the really fascinating thing for me is to meet these people and to see what life-changing events, what transformation happens, Katherine, when you're actually on the ground with them. So that's a little bit about who we are.
That's an amazing story. So one question so talking about big audacious goals that you just mentioned,
Right.
How are we keeping tabs on, well, one, just the growth of the number of clients, the number of different types of services? How are you going to achieve the 20 million clients that serve 100 million people?
Yeah, so it's interesting. You know, we're better than halfway there. And as we look at continuing to be transformative in how we look at serving clients. I think the organization as well should own the fact, two things I think are really important to state to this group in this community. We are clearly organized around our faith. We serve everyone regardless of their faith or sex or religious orientation, and proudly do that, proudly go into communities with that in mind. The second thing that is unique about us is that we're on the ground. So we have 20,000 employees. Most of them, 99%, are on the ground actually working with our clients. And so how do we reach this goal of 20 million jobs by 2020? As I said, the trajectory is right on track that we'll exceed that. If we continue to look for new and different ways of creating jobs and creating services that help ensure, like our fabulous education program, that ensure that there is readiness for young men and women across the world in various places that we serve, 28 countries, then I don't have any doubt that we'll reach that goal. That said, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention to you all that one of the most important things that we're focused on right now is the breakthrough, the disruptive strategy around what's happening with technology. Mm-hmm. And so for those of you who have been to Africa, let me see a showing of hands of our governors that have been to visit our work in Africa. A lot, about a third of the room. Well, Africa, unlike the US, just superseded servers and back office equipment and went right down the center of the lane. And so 80% of all Africans have a mobile phone.
It's amazing.
80%. And so we're very invested in accelerating, doing all the transactions that we do through education right on either pads or mobile devices. Because why is that important? It's important because it allows us to reduce the amount of our transactions with people from about $10 down to less than $1 a transaction. It also allows us to really do a lot of reach in the rural and most difficult parts of the world to reach, because we believe we're called to love and serve people that are living in the most rural parts of the world. And so in order to do that effectively and efficiently, we've got to find ways of really using digital products well. We had an interesting conversation today about some of the work that we're doing around mobile money. And so a really important part of our work as we move forward.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
To just switch the gears a little bit, could you tell us a little bit, why did Opportunity move from Oak Brook into Chicago? I mean, we saw the great video a little bit ago from the governor and his wife, and obviously they're passionate supporters, but why Chicago? Why not stay where you are?
Yeah, so,
or were, I should say.
Oh, so what?
Why didn't you stay where you were? Because you're now in the city.
So I want to go back. I want to make one other comment about, can I back up for a minute?
You can go
Rewind
back.
the tape?
Yes.
And tell a funny story about Bill Gates. I was at an event about a year ago at the UN, and he was there, as were all of the leaders of the world. And we were visiting a session that was called Access to Mobile Money or something like that. And there were a number of key leaders around the world that were talking about things they were doing to ensure that they could utilize mobile money to really break through and really improve the world that we know it and really help people that are living in poverty. So Bill walks up to the microphone, and I'm surrounded by our peers and colleagues, and he goes through this story about a woman living in Malawi that had all of her loan and savings in an account in our bank there. And her husband died. And her brother-in-law, and Julie's smiling, she knows this story. Her brother-in-law went to the bank to access what money she had. And because of the biometric technology that we have across many of our banks, he couldn't have access to her money. And so the next day, Bill told the story, there was a line of over a mile long of women with all of their savings in their little tin cans and jars lined up to put their money in our bank in Malawi. And he said, if you want to see best-in-class technology around mobile money, go to Opportunity. So I about fell off my chair thinking, wow, how do you plan?
So
Some of you have heard this. How do you plan that? Well, you don't. So I'll wrap this story up and we'll talk about Chicago. But I'm never there, so we'll talk about it anyhow. Anyhow, so he's got like 1 million security guards around him. So I'm like, I'm going to say hello to Bill. So I sneak around the back as he's walking out, and as I said, he's 3 or 4 feet deep in security people. He goes down the escalator, and I yell from the top of the escalator in my most southern way, gracious manner. I said, hey, Bill! And he looked back at me, and the whole security guard group looked back at me like, who is this crazy person in the front of the line here? And he looked, and he smiled, and I said, I'm with Opportunity. And so I walked down and introduced myself, and he said, you guys do wonderful work. And Linda and I, of course, they love and support us and have supported us as our top donors. So anyhow, why did we make the move to Chicago? I would say that, our roots in Oak Brook were deep. We loved the work that we started there. And it was very special to us. But as we came together, and many of you know this, a year ago as a global organization and signed an agreement that said we would work together, Australia, the UK, Canada, Germany, Hong Kong, and so forth, that we would take on a global board, a global CEO. We would do all of our finance, our fundraising, our marketing, everything together. And so as we looked at our lease running out in Oak Brook, with Chicago being second largest, second to New York and LA, but the second largest city in the United States as far as business and corporations are concerned, that it would be a great place for us to grow our presence. It'd be a great place for our donors to come in and out. It's also one of the largest hubs as far as institutions, foundations in the country is concerned. Mm-hmm. And finally, as we look at continuing to evolve and be innovative, it is the center of 2 great universities, University of Chicago, certainly Northwestern, certainly Loyola, and lots of other organizations that really allow us to draw from some of the best and brightest for our future hiring. And so certainly Governor Rauner and Diana were pleased about that, as was our mayor. But it's been a great move for us. We're right in the center of a lot of energy, and it's giving us access to a lot of new people that we didn't know before. So that was the reason for the move.